here we go. We're going with episode 5 of our Chronicles of Drunagor series, Age of Darkness. And we're going to be painting one of the other heroes named Tork. Now, Tork is an orc barbarian with orange skin, which I have never seen an orc with orange skin, but I like their changing of the color palette. So we're going to paint this up real quick. Nothing too crazy, but hey, if this is your first time at the channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up, hit that bell button. Support this channel if you're a fan, because I appreciate every single one of you that watch these videos and leave a comment and subscribe to this channel. It makes me want to paint more miniatures. But without further ado, let's go. Obviously, the first thing we're going to do is prep our miniature by scraping off any mold lines that we find. If you need any supplies or if you need the paint list, go ahead and check the description below. We're then going to take some sticky tack, put on an old spray can cap, and we are going to prime. I'm using an airbrush with some black primer from Vellejo, but you can use a spray can of black paint, whatever you want to use. After that, I'm going to do some zenithal highlighting with some white primer, another Vellejo paint. Again, if you're using spray cans, just spray from above. I have a priming video if you want to check that out. But real simple, nothing too crazy. You just want to create that light and darkness tones of zenith. And it should look something like this. To start our base colors, we're going to start with a little Ratskin Flesh, and I primarily use Citadel paints. If you've been watching this channel, you know that I like Citadel paints because I was roped into it as a kid playing Warhammer, so I can't break that habit. We're going to paint all of our skin with this color, which is a nice dull looking orange for a good base coat that we're looking for. So just go around, put on some good music, put on a book, whatever you want to do, and enjoy the paint. The next color we're going to be using is a little bit of Rhinox Hide. And again, I'm using a wet palette while I'm using this, and I'm thinning my paints. You want them thin enough where that undercoat of that zenithal highlighting that we did somewhat sticks out. You can definitely tell that it's there and that you can actually see it. So go ahead and hit those areas. You're going to do in the hair, the axe handle, and some other portions. So just follow along with what I'm doing. The next color we're going to be using is some Mephiston Red, and this is going to be several places on this miniature. To include the gauntlets that are around his wrist, we're going to be painting that on the inside. At this stage, you don't need to be exactly careful, but red is a very bright color. It's going to be a little hard to paint over if you need to. We're going to be painting the gauntlets. He has a hair tie, I'll call it a hair tie, maybe a scrunchie, maybe he's from the 80s, I'm not sure. It's holding up his long hair in the back. He has some front portions of red on his gown or skirt or whatever he's wearing in the front that we're going to be painting red as well. The shin guards that he's wearing, I'm also doing in a red paint, or obviously because we're using Mephiston Red, and we're going to just paint them red. We're going to dull them down here in a later step. We're going to be using 3 different metallic paints, and the first one we're going to be using is some Iron Warriors, which is a darker version of Leadbelcher. If you just have Leadbelcher, just add some black to it and make it a little bit darker metallic. And we're going to be painting some portions of the gauntlet on his shoulder, some on his belt, and the chains that are around. Now, if you're looking at the card art, which I'm always trying to follow, there is no shoulder mount in the card art. I don't know how that got lost in translation, but it is kind of cool, so we're just going to use our imagination on that in a little bit. For the bone, we're going to use some Wraithbone. And for the belt that's going around his chest, which again is not on the card art, we are going to use some Mournfang Brown. For the edging of the wrist gauntlets, we're going to be using some Grey Knight Steel, which is a brighter steel look that we're looking for. That was a lot of looks. And for the middle of our stone axe, we're going to be using some Leadbelcher. And we're going to be also using this as an edge highlight on the ankle shin guard area. For our stone axe, we're going to be using some Dawnstone. Stone axe, Dawnstone, get it? For our straps holding up those gauntlets, we're going to be using Abaddon Black. And for a portion of that skirt, we're going to be using some XV88. Just be very careful because obviously we've started painting a vast majority of this miniature. We don't want to get it everywhere. And while you're painting this miniature, if you got a second, head over to our Instagram, which is nerd.nights, and subscribe to us over there. You can kind of see what we're doing and what we got coming up. If you just have a second, no big deal. We're going to go back to that Mournfang well and paint that back leathery portion with this color. I'm going to go back to that Abaddon Black well and paint some of the black leathery look portions. For our fur bits, which is above the ankle guards and a little bit on his left arm, we're going to use some Celestra Grey. There are several portions of this miniature that have some bone in them, and we're going to use some Rakarth Flesh for them. The first one is he has some tusks hanging down from where his beard is. The next is on the belt area. He's got some tusk looking things. And And also the bone bits that are on the wrist guard gauntlet areas. I forgot to paint this in this portion of the video, so I had to go back and do this off camera, but don't forget, like I did. I'm also going to use this for the nails, or his toenails, just to kind of give him a little nice little pick-me-up. I'm also using this on the axe blade, or axe handle. And finally, we're going to go back to some Leadbelcher and hit up some of those rivets that are sticking up on his belt. All right, now we're on to the washes. We're going to do a 4-to-1 mix of Fuegan Orange and Agrax Earthshade. So 4 brushfuls of Fuegan Orange, 1 brushful of Agrax Earthshade. I mixed it in a little well, and we're going to slap that all over our skin area, and that's going to give it a nice, deep, rich orange look that's going to look fantastic when it dries. I promise you that is key. You need a little bit of Agrax Earthshade in there. Next, we're going to use some Skeleton Horde, which is a contrast paint from Citadel. If you don't have this, just use Agrax Earthshade. It's not a big deal. For our main wash, we're going to be using Agrax Earthshade, and we're going to be using this on almost the entire miniature except for the axe blade, I guess you could say, and the metal portion on the middle part of the axe blade. So we're going to hit basically everything with this and give it that nice, deep, earthy look. And finally, some Nulin Oil on our axe blade. Once that is fully dry, we're going to start building up our highlights. First thing we're going to be doing is Ratskin Flesh. Now you want to thin this very well. Make sure it is a properly thinned paint. You have a milky skim milk consistency on this, and we're going to start building up our highlights for our skin. When we're painting the skin, we really want to focus on the raised areas and doing it in segments. Obviously, Tork is a very muscular orc, and the muscle is broken into different segments. We want to do this in different segments, meaning we want to do one portion of muscle and do the other, while leaving this wash that we put in there in the recesses. When we're doing the face as well, we want to hit that forehead, the cheekbones, the bridge of the nose, the ears, and a little bit on the lips. So just be very careful, take your time in this step. Next, we're going to take a 1-to-1 mix of Ratskin Flesh and Firedragon Bright, and we're going to go over basically the same thing we just went over. You want to do probably 1 to 2 coats of this. Let the first coat dry and do a second one, and that's going to start building up your highlights. Again, we're going over the same areas we just went over and leaving all of that nice wash in the recesses. You're going to start building up that color variation between the orange and the darkness. And for our last highlight, we're going to take a very thin coat of Firedragon Bright, and we're just going to be hitting certain areas. The top of that peck, a little bit on the shoulder, a little bit on the face, bridge of the nose, the mouth, the ears, a little bit on the back. You don't want to do anything that's kind of covered by the darkness or in the shadowy recess areas. With the skin accomplished, we're going to use some Gorthor Brown to kind of highlight up some of that earlier Rhinox Hide usage. Very thin coat, get some of that nice hair sticking out. You don't want to go overboard with this. Just a nice little subtle variation color that'll catch the eye. For our skull pieces, we're going to use some Screaming Skull just to kind of brighten up a little bit, and that's all we're going to be kind of doing for that. We're also going to use this color on our nice bone that is sticking out from our gauntlets just to highlight up those just a little bit. Next, we're going to use some Iron Breaker to brighten up those gauntlets, the edging just a little bit. We just want to use it on that portion, maybe a little bit on that belt buckle that is around his chest. We are not going to use it around his waist because we're going to redo that here in a second. We're going to take a reapplication of Iron Warriors and we're going to hit up those chains and all the metal pieces on his waist. We're going to re-highlight up our red, and again, we're just going to be doing the raised areas. We just want to use this a little bit too on the shin guards, just to give it a little bit of nice color variation, just to brighten up just a little bit. Next, just to brighten up a little pieces of that red, preferably just on the front portion of that red on the skirt, we're going to use some Eagle Sunz Scarlet on a couple of those strands. Nothing crazy here. And to brighten up our skirt just a little bit, we're going to use some Tallarn Sand on some of those strands. Just pick a couple of them out, make a nice little tonal variation. Nothing crazy, but something just subtle enough to catch that eye. For that fur area, we're going to use some ivory, and we're just going to kind of do some crisscrosses up and downs just to make it look like fur, like it's all kind of messy and nasty. And to brighten back up our blade, our stone blade, we're going to use some Dawnstone just to dry brush on it real quick, just to kind of give it a nice overall nasty stony look. For our eyes, we're going to put nice little dabs of white. I'm using a size 10-0 brush in there. Less is more in this instance. We do not want to go overboard, so try your hardest not to make those whites very big. Then just a small dab of Abaddon Black to make a little pupil. And as we're coming down the home stretch here, we're going to be using some Mechanicus standard gray or whatever neutral gray you have, and we're going to be doing the base. This is one thing I wish they would have not done, is make it like a stone look, because the stone looks like crap. So I wish they would have done something else, but they didn't. So after that gray is dry brush on some Longbeard Grey just to give that little stone that you do see some color variation. And that's it. Look how good you did. Nothing crazy, nothing we've not done before, but you did a great job. And that is a fantastic miniature to put on the table. I mean, really fantastic. And I'm proud of you for following along and doing it. You should be proud for yourself. Thank you everybody for watching. If you are not a subscriber, please think about subscribing. And if you are a subscriber, thank you so much. I do this channel for you guys and you guys only. So thank you, and paint on.